So Molly Stevens, I'm a director of research. I originally come from the United States. I've lived in a lot of different places in the United States, Michigan, Georgia, New Jersey, California,
Wow.
Utah. Um, and I've also lived abroad. This is my fourth time living abroad. So I've lived in Germany, Ireland, China, and now Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
Mm.
So,
You've
and
been all
after
over
work,
the world. Mm.
yeah, I have traveled a lot. Travel is definitely really important to me. And after work and the things I like to do, so I have two main hobbies. So one is cycling, exercise, triathlon,
Hmm.
kind of things, which I started on my 40th birthday when I was living in China. And
Wow.
then I'm a quilter, so I do a lot of sewing and making blankets, basically.
Yeah, I got the mask you mailed to me. That was amazing. Yeah, that one.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been making a lot of masks in the last month or two. So,
Yeah, super sweet. And you said you lived in Germany and China before, so I guess your German and Chinese must be really good.
um, both are not very good. I will be honest.
Oh.
German I studied starting when I was 10.
Hmm.
And studied for 12 years. So I have a lot of German vocabulary, but my spoken German is pretty much gone. Um,
Mm.
it's helping me learn Dutch, though.
Yeah.
Um, Chinese wise, it's mostly gone. So when I worked in China, I worked in English most of the time.
Mm.
So I picked up some Chinese for sure while I was there, but not, it's mostly gone at this point, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, if you want, I'm happy to practice that with you.
I,
Yeah.
that would be very, very good at your demonstrating your expertise and my lack of it.
Yeah. Oh, but I'm not sure like how much. Yeah. I lot after being living abroad for several years, my Chinese is not as sophisticated as before. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
maybe you
amazing
can
how that
listen to that.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and also you mentioned that you were working at the China. I guess you were in Shanghai, right?
Yes.
And yeah, and actually I was also living in that city when you were there.
Oh, wow.
And I have visited the canteen at Google, and the
Oh,
food was
yeah.
so amazing. Yeah, I shared with you before. So I'm really curious after you trying the canteen and you had different companies, let's say Google and Uber and our company. So which one is your favorite?
Which one is my favorite canteen? Oh, that's hot. That's tough. Um, I would say that the Google New York canteen is
Mm-hmm.
my favorite. So when I started at Google in 2007,
Mm-hmm.
my main office was in New York City. And I
Mm.
was there as the building grew and we had got a lot more employees. And um, I don't know, the food and the atmosphere there is amazing. And you can sit outside on the deck and it's really, really
Wow.
nice.
Did you have a view in the building as well?
Yeah,
Oversee the uh
yeah, you could see the Empire State Building from the office, and it was just a lovely, lovely building to be in. So
that's amazing. Yeah. The skyline is there.
yeah, it was beautiful
Yeah.
when it snowed in the wintertime in particular, because you could see the buildings get covered and very
Yeah.
romantic. So
Yeah. Yeah, I can picture that in my head. Oh, that's amazing. And you mentioned that you've worked in the US, China, airline, and also Europe as well.
yeah.
And so what would you consider as the like a major difference in terms of work and life in these three different regions?
Yeah. So I grew up in a very small town of 1,500 people. I used to joke that on the subway in the morning in Shanghai, there were many, many, many more people in my train, like in my single train, than there were in
Oh,
my entire town. Um, but so I think for me, exploring new cultures and understanding new things has always been really important. It's part of the
Mm,
reason I think that I enjoy user research because
mm,
people react to things in ways that I wouldn't expect and that are really interesting and new.
yeah.
So I've studied in Germany during college and worked a little bit on the side, but wasn't full working. And then I worked in Ireland at the newspaper as a on the technology desk, so helping get photos ready.
Mm-hmm.
What was different about that experience for me, anyway, was that many of the people I worked with had been in at the newspaper or in a particular job since they were 18. It was a very different experience
Mm.
working at a newspaper um, in Ireland because they just had such a long they have a very different kind of culture around work and the job. So
Oh,
um, there was an older gentleman that I worked with who was about 60, and he'd worked at the newspaper since he was 18. Um, and it was very
that's
interesting.
uh, that's crazy. Like that sounds like my grandparents' generation. You do
Exactly.
one occupation, then you do that for your
Yeah,
entire life. Yeah.
exactly. Very different. And it was during the time in Ireland that I decided I wanted to go back to school. I wasn't yet in user experience. I was doing web design.
Mm,
I was using Photoshop. I was doing things like that. And my husband and I decided, well, we had been living in Atlanta. We moved to Ireland and we moved back to
mm,
Atlanta. So I applied to grad programs and ended up getting a master's at Georgia Tech
mm.
in
Oh,
information design and
it's
technology.
I know it's a very decent school for
Yeah.
human technology interaction. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great experience. It was a very good 2-year program.
Mm,
Um, and, you know, as my career progressed, about 11 years after I started my master's program, I had been
mm,
at Google for a while then, and I needed something new. And I thought it would be a great experience to live in Shanghai. I had
mhm,
gone there in 2010 for the expo
mhm.
and really enjoyed the expo and the people I met at the Google office in Shanghai. Um, and they had a role open, so I moved
Oh,
over there for 3 years. I think my experience of Shanghai was really special. I had a really close user experience team. And I loved that we sat together. We did things together. When it was
mm.
lunchtime, everyone would be like, Chiffon, Chiffon, and we'd all get up and we'd all get up
Yeah,
and go eat lunch together
it's more
every
like a
time.
collective culture there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
nice and a very positive experience for me. They were very welcoming. There were other expats who came to the Shanghai office who didn't have as positive of an experience. And I
Mm,
remember at one point HR came to me and they said, "What's different? What have you done differently that made it
yeah.
positive?" And for me, it was really the user experience community at the office was really lovely and supportive.
Mm,
That was great.
so sweet. Yeah.
And then Europe, I mean, I think what I appreciate about Europe a lot is the better work-life balance than
Mm,
I've experienced in Silicon Valley. It's not perfect. And I, as a manager, often tell my folks who report to me is that the nature of user experience work and research work is that you will sometimes have weeks when you do a lot of work, right? When you know, there's many hours beyond your usual hourly
mm,
time, but it shouldn't be all the time, right? It
mm,
should be an exception. You know, and then you should take comp days after that to make sure that you have space and time to do that. But
mm.
the problem I saw in Silicon Valley is that it was expected that it was all the time, right? And
Yeah.
that's just it's not healthy, and you can't
Mm,
um, you can't even think about how
no.
to make improvements to your day-to-day work or think about ways to improve the field if you don't have space to think about it more extensively.
Yeah, exactly. You are just always being busy for nothing.
Exactly. And the busier you are, probably the slower you are at the tasks that are really important because you don't have the ability to focus. So it has an impact in a broader way.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, makes sense. I resonate to that because that also remind me of the time when I was in Shanghai. So kind of a bit similar working culture. So you expect to work extremely hard and maybe even outside of working hours.
Yeah.
But then you have no time to think about how you can organize it.
Yeah.
Cool. And Molly, you are a very seasoned researcher. You have a very successful career in UX research field. But now let's go back to the very beginning. Let's say, 20 years ago when you when you were like 20 something. I'm curious, how did you end up being a researcher? Like, what are some of the things that you have done that have led you there?
Yeah. So when I started my journey, so I decided I would go back to grad school, and the program I was in was called Information Design and Technology. So it was more of an information architecture, web design program. And I took a class in HCI as one of my, possible classes just to take. I'd heard it was really good. And I loved it. I thought it was fascinating thinking about how human psychology can affect the way that we interact with technology. And then I took the follow-on class from that, which was ethnographic research methods. And both of those, I just loved the classes. So from then on, I always had a strong thread of research in the work that I was doing. I was also interested, and I had made a career change. So the opposite of the gentleman I described in Ireland, right? My undergraduate degree is in German. I worked as a secretary. I had all kinds of odd jobs for my first 5 years out of college, and then decided to go to grad school. So I think that helped me in grad school to be more focused because I really knew what I wanted. The other thing that helped me be focused was that I had a baby. So my daughter was 9 months old when I started grad school. Knowing that I didn't have extra time, right? I had to focus when she was in daycare and do the work that I needed to do. So those things helped me do basically a degree that specialized in design and research. And then I started working for a usability consulting firm in 2002 as a contractor, and eventually they hired me full time. And that taught me a lot about research. I had a great mentor there, and I realized that while I could do design, it's not what I'm best at. So really the human side and understanding people and the research side gave me a lot of energy. Made me very excited, and doing the work seemed easy and, very engaging. And I think that's one of my main career tips to people is that I have seen that it is much better for people to pick something as an area of focus if they have a lot of energy around it, if it gives them that feeling, then just picking something because you think it's the right thing to do. Because if you pick something because you think it's the right thing to do, you just don't have the energy to see it through to the end in the same way. And even if you do accomplish it, then at the end, you kind of look around and say, why did I do that, right? There's no intrinsic realization that was a really good thing for you to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that that's one of the things that's guided me on my path to where I am now, is picking things that I was very excited about and pursuing them.
Yeah, and be very good at it. Become the master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, nobody's good at anything the first time, or if they're good the first time, it doesn't last. So, everyone has to practice and work hard at something. And if practicing isn't fun, you're not going to do it, right? So it's a virtuous cycle, right? So you pick something because you think it's fun, and then you do it and it's hard, but you're still learning. So you keep doing it and you just kind of, keep making improvements to the area as you move forward.
Yep. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I like how you picture it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's imagine that we take the time machine and fly back to the year that when you were in your 20s, when
Hmm.
you're about to start your career
Yeah.
in research. So
Hmm.
what would be your advice to Molly, at that time?
Hmm. My advice. So try and think about a time. Um, I think that I think it's a good advice anyway. I think when I started my career, um, if I was around someone who was very knowledgeable, I think
Mm,
sometimes I was afraid to admit I didn't know something.
mm,
Right. So they would say such and such, they would say something and I would go, uh-huh, uh-huh. Even though if I had said, I don't know what that is, or I don't understand, I could have had a different kind of discussion with. Um,
mm,
and so I actually consciously now, if someone's talking about something and I don't know, I will say, I don't know what that is. Can you tell me more about it? Or,
mm.
what's your point of view? Now, they don't have to be your only source of information, but I think it's really it's helped me learn a lot in ways that
Mm.
I didn't learn before.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess when we were young, we have this, ego for us
Yeah,
to please, and we're really shy from admitting that we don't know it. We want to just fake it, but people can tell actually.
yeah. Faking.
Yeah.
I sometimes you have to fake it a bit. I once,
Mm,
when I was working at the consulting firm,
mm,
was hired by Yahoo Consulting
mm,
to um, come on as a user experience consultant. So I was a consultant working with Yahoo Consulting, and then Yahoo was going out to California to work with a company. And it
mm.
was, I had to pretend that I was a Yahoo employee, and I also had to pretend that I had a lot more experience than I did. And I learned a
Uh,
lot, and I don't think it was a terrible experience for them, but wow, it was intense.
But you did it. That was
I
great.
did it. Yeah.
Uh,
I graduated from my master's program in 2002.
mm.
Was just after the dot-com bubble, the first dot-com bubble, the dot-com bust.
Oh
So there
yeah.
was a lot of Webvan was, there were all these big things about the internet in California, and it just kind of blew up.
Mm,
And so it was very hard for me to find a job. There were no jobs available. The few that were available were being taken by people with a lot more experience. I mentor people sometimes, and they want to go straight for the cool career job first, right? And they want to
yeah.
get that thing that is on the resume. It takes time, right? It took me
Mm.
6 years to get to Google.